Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. You'll see momentarily on the screen. Pleased to have John Steppe joining us. John, a beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes at the Gazette.com, or pick up a print copy. You'll see all of John's information at the bottom of the screen, along with mine throughout the program. And our guest, James Morris, will join us here after John and I. And James, former Hawkeye linebacking great. And we'll be talking defense with James. You can bet your bottom dollar on that. Speaking of betting your bottom dollar, Scott Pritchard joins us to close out the show in the third and final segment. Scotty P, our professional sports bettor from Vegas, Northeast Iowa native, been in Vegas 30 plus years. So always look forward to talking to Scotty P. That being said, look forward to talking to this guy. It's been a few weeks. So John, always great to talk to you. John Steppe with the Gazette. Thanks for joining us. And John, how you doing?
I am great. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
And likewise, and you're welcome and thank you. So, and I've talked to James Morris about this in the past, and I'm sure he's going to say the same thing in the next segment. You know, playing in that Phil Parker defense and the big plays, as Phil has said many times over, you know, we do not give up big plays. Well, that happened in special teams too. All to the same guy, Ross, number 7 for Troy, who was named the nation's college football special teams player of the week. He should be named the offensive player of the week as well. 2 60-plus yard touchdown receptions, punt return, 60-plus yards. But it's intriguing when we talk about this. You know, the confusion on defense, okay, that's one thing. But then to see it happen to LeVar Woods and the special teams in the same game, you mentioned the Iowa State game. Okay, that was the week earlier. But to see this all happen at once, it doesn't minimize what Kaleb Johnson has done, by the way, leading the nation in yards rushing at 479 yards. They say 3 games, but John, we know he was suspended that first half of the Illinois State game. So essentially 2.5 games, he's averaging 160 yards a game. He and the offensive line doing big things consistently. But John, to me, I take a look at this and I say, okay, you got to adjust that on defense because now the competition gets ratcheted up against Minnesota at Minnesota. 6:30 kick, prime time on Saturday night on NBC. You're going to Minnesota. PJ Fleck, of course, Hawkeye fans have their love-hate relationship. I'll be kind with PJ Fleck on that. And then you look at Max Brosmer at quarterback, Darius Taylor running back, catches the ball out of the backfield. You got Jackson catching passes for them. This is a relatively formidable offense. So I know a lot of people are thinking this is going to be a defensive struggle and a low-scoring game, but man, you cannot give up big plays at Minnesota to Minnesota. They've got talented skill players, John. This is a Big Ten kickoff for the Hawks this season. So add all that in. This is something else, John.
Yeah, and that gets to another key thing about how Iowa really hasn't played a full, consistent 60 minutes, where we've seen, you look back at the Illinois State game and the third and fourth quarters, you would take that any day. And then Iowa State, first and the second quarters looked really strong. Troy, you'd probably say first and fourth quarters looked strong. Some of the third as well with that. And really being able to play a full 60 minutes, a full 4 quarters, it sounds like a coach's cliche, but it really is true, I think, for this Iowa football team, where you can get away with that against an Illinois State caliber team. You can get away with that against a Troy caliber team. But here's really the part of the schedule where they have to piece everything together. And your margin for error is going to be a lot smaller against Minnesota than it was against Troy. And I'll also say that after the Minnesota game, they have a bye, but then after the bye is Ohio State. And the margin for error will be even smaller against Ohio State. They'll be virtually non-existent compared to what it is against Minnesota. So you look at it and a much thinner margin for error that goes to big plays, needing to be more consistent. That's really the key for this Iowa football team.
We've mentioned this before in this program, and I'm glad you brought it up again. John is an AP voter this year, starting this year, and hopefully moving onward. If the Hawks win this game at Minnesota, and I know there's a lot of other variables, but I'm just going to play media guy here and ask it. Do the Hawks get your vote of being in the top 25 if they win at Minnesota this week? I know you could say, well, Dave, they got to win by, do they have to win by a certain number, or does just a win get them in your top 25 for the Hawks?
I think some other things have to happen in terms of teams currently ranked to slip in order for that to happen.
Fair enough.
Look at it, Iowa could very well put themselves back into my ballot. They were earlier this year. They have not been since the Iowa State loss. But just a win over Minnesota by itself is not enough. You look at this Minnesota team, and they had some pretty big wins against Rhode Island and Nevada. but we're talking about Rhode
Shoulda,
Island.
coulda,
And
woulda
Nevada.
had that North Carolina game in game one, too. I think that would have made a difference if Minnesota was 3-0 going into this game. And I didn't mean to, ask you that pie in the sky question, but I knew there were a lot of variables. So let's close out with this then. Did head coach Kirk Ferentz, again, we record this on Tuesday afternoon, September 17th. Did Kirk give any information or anything with LeSean Williams, any other injuries? And what is his general sense or vibe? We talk about all the hype going into this Minnesota game. Is he trying to downplay that? What are his thoughts? Did he address that? But let's start with any injuries besides LeSean Williams and anything else KF might have given today at the presser.
Yeah, the one injury update is LeSean Williams suffered an injury in the Troy game. He had also missed a good chunk of fall camp. He is not expected to play. A return this week did not seem reasonable. So he will not be good to go. That was the only injury that he specifically mentioned in this Tuesday press conference. Now, Seth Anderson, wide receiver, has been missing the last few weeks. I would not be surprised if he's out again. We'll see when the availability report comes out. So LeSean Williams is probably the most notable name. Now, the good news for Iowa is running back is an area of a lot of depth. And when you have Kaleb Johnson, the nation's leading with an asterisk rusher, okay, you can afford to have an injury at running back and still be okay. Now, in terms of what else you were saying about the rivalry, you can tell that Kirk Ferentz has a lot of appreciation for this rivalry. He is talking back about his first introduction to the rivalry in 1981, and then a much different, or I shouldn't say a much different, but a different memory from that 1982 game. And that's something I wrote about already this afternoon. So, we went a little bit down memory lane, down what he referred to as ancient history. So not afraid to call himself old at the age of 69, but some people, that's very young. So yeah. I'm not calling that ancient history. That was his words, not mine. But
well, he's a young 69, as we know. He carries himself very well. But John, I really appreciate that because, again, he knows, especially of all people, this is a big rivalry game for both states, both teams. But I know he's trying to keep it as low-key as possible. But, yeah, the history build-up in this and the Floyd of Rosedale Pig Trophy, that's always a big ceremony at the end of the winning team. And Iowa would go across the field and take it back from the Minnesota sideline. I'm envisioning that now as I speak, and I'm sure a lot of Hawkeye fans are too. John, it's always great to see you. John is Hawkeye, is beat writer for the Iowa Hawkeyes for the Gazette, Cedar Rapids Gazette. Great to see you as always, John, and thanks so much for joining us as always.
Always a pleasure, especially with such a good rivalry week this week.
Amen to that, my friend. So for John Steppe, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back with more, and James Morris, former Hawkeye linebacking great. Back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
Hawkeye is brought to you by Better Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Better Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kieski, Better Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at betteredge.com/Hawkeye and get $10 to start winning more today. Better Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
You don't have a lot of time to make decisions today if you want to be out front with the newest products. This is Joe Mershman from Mershman Seeds. Did you know that we're one of the first 2 companies to offer Enlist E3 soybeans in the United States? And because of that, you benefit from it. Here's Ben Pieper to tell you more.
With Enlist E3 soybeans, we have a front row seat to the highest yielding germplasm that's on the market. That allows us to focus on the things that matter to you, making sure you get what you ordered delivered on time to ensure the highest yielding soybeans for your farm.
Contact your local Mershman Seeds dealer today. They care and are ready to help you.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy James Morris joining us. James, a former linebacking great for the University of Iowa Hawkeyes, Super Bowl winner with the New England Patriots. James, of course, former Mr. Gatorade in Iowa football as well, and is a member of the Iowa High School Football Hall of Fame. Thanks for joining us, and how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thanks for telling all your viewers that I peaked in high school. So.
Not true, because you get a Super Bowl ring. Come on now. Oh, you're too humble. I love it. So let's get to it right away. After an interesting week 1 victory, everybody was excited. Okay, they blew out Illinois State. Then they get punched in the mouth by Iowa State, 20-19. We've covered that the last last week and earlier this week. So let's you and I talk about what happened last week with Troy. And you and I have had this discussion last year. Let's bring it up again this year. You played for Phil Parker. You know what it's like. Poor Phil has to be going crazy with the 2 over the top just against Troy. And, of course, the unusual special teams return for a touchdown, which LeVar Woods has got to be going crazy. 2 very uncharacteristic things. But in Phil's case, this has happened in every game. They've gotten beaten over the top. And let's talk about it. As you're smiling, because you know Phil's not having a good time right now, nor the defense, right?
Yeah, and Phil's not watching, but if he was, Phil, no, I don't take pleasure in tormenting you. But no, he's got to be going crazy. He's constantly preaching, no big plays, no big plays. And you don't have to be a football Einstein to kind of diagnose what's happening here, right? It's deep routes, and coverage is letting the receivers get behind them. And that's an easy way to lose games really quick.
If you would, we talked about this off the air. We've talked about it on the air with you over the years. Talk to us a little bit. I know it's very basic football 101, but what's the concept here and what's happening and what's most importantly, what's not happening, James, on those big plays?
Well, the first one to number 7, it was just a hitch and go. It was essentially man coverage. I don't know if it was man called, but the play can convert into man in the sense that if you're a quarters corner and your receiver runs a vertical route, you got him. He's yours. It's man to man all the way to the end zone. And so he ran that little stutter go, and TJ bit, and then number 7 was not a guy you wanted to get behind in a foot race. I mean, very quick. So the first one was pretty clean. I don't think there was a lot going on there. It was just a miss. Then the punt return we talked about. And then on the other one, they kind of had, it was like a vertical scissors concept, right? Where the receivers cross and then go vertical again down the field. And so when you have that against zone defenses, either you execute a handoff where the corner and the safety, or maybe it's a linebacker, they have to pass the receivers off to one another, or there's an exchange. And sometimes that can create confusion, or you might be playing one guy shallow or one guy soft, and then they cross, and the next thing you know, you got to play one guy tight, and you're playing catch up. And so see my comment from 10 seconds ago, you're playing catch up against number 7. He's going to win most of those foot races. And so that's what happened. It was a little crossing action and some miscommunication that put TJ behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, Devian Ross for Troy, as you're mentioning, number 7. 3 long touchdowns. The punt return, 60-plus yards, and 2 pass plays, 60-plus yards, was the National Special Teams Player of the Week for college football. Shoulda, coulda, would have been the Offensive Player of the Week as well. But so what, remedying that, what is happening this week in the film room and on the practice field with Phil and the defense? Dare I ask?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure they're working through their communication, and they're probably coaching him up. Hey, if you got a speedy receiver, you're going to have to give him a little bit more respect. On the hitch and go, there's nothing really to coach there other than don't bite on the hitch. Or if you do bite on the hitch, again, play with a little bit more cushion so you got some time to recover. But I'll just go back to playing cornerback is probably, I think, maybe the second hardest position in the game behind quarterback. And that's why those guys that are really good, they get paid a lot of money. They're up there with some of the highest paid guys in the NFL. And it's because that job is so difficult. I mean, it's like being a wrestler, man. You're on your own. You're by yourself on the mat, and you got one guy to cover them. And if you screw up, everybody's going to know it.
Yeah, and again, to your point, wide receivers, the NFL game has changed so much where running backs have almost become obsolete. And now it's the wide receivers, tight ends, D-backs. The quarterbacks, of course, is always making the big check. Back to a past comment you made. I love it that you threw off balance Pat Anger and James Vandenberg on a couple of weeks ago. And I quoted you where you said a couple of years ago to me, Dave, it's not that I was the quarterback of the defensive middle linebacker, Pat Anger, and you, Pat, a little bit before you. And then you said James Vandenberg is the middle linebacker of the offense. And they both are like, what does that mean? Only James Morris would come up with that. I defend you, James. I get that totally. I love what you said.
Well, you know who gave that to me was Norm Parker. And so when you go on a whiteboard and you go draw plays and you say, you start with the center and then you draw out the lineman and the quarterback. Most people draw the offense descending down. So you have your offensive line here and then the quarterback and they move down. And so I did that one time when Norm asked me to draw up a play, and he's like, why the hell are you drawing it that way? Are you a quarterback? Is that how you see the field? You guys stare into the defense? And he's like, no, you got to spin it around and draw the defense down here and then the offense over there, because that's how you'll see them on a plane. So that's his way of saying it's all in your perspective, and you have to translate that perspective to everything you do related to the game. So that's why I say quarterbacks are the middle linebacker of the offense.
And I loved your experience. So no, you definitely did not peak in high school. You had the privilege of playing for two guys. Although Phil was in ailing health, or Norm was in ailing health when you were there. But you've told me a few other jewels that Phil has told you, or Norm has told you over time. And then you got to play for Phil Parker after Norm had gotten sick, and then before passing away. But what a privilege you had in playing for two legends at Iowa on the defensive side of the ball, James.
Yeah, very lucky. I mean, the thing with Norm, God bless him. I wish he had more time. I wish he was still here. And just what a great sense of humor. What a fountain of knowledge, a true legend. And unfortunately, his health was such that even my freshman and then sophomore year, he wasn't as engaged as he wanted to be. So yeah, incredibly blessed that way. And then into the NFL, playing for Hall of Fame caliber head coaches and coordinators that have gone on to great success. So very blessed in that regard. My comment on this team, this is one of, I think, the strongest, deepest, most talented rosters that I think Kirk has had. When you add in the 5th year, the 6 years, the COVID years, and then just the job they've done on recruiting. And then one observation I just make is the coaching job that Kelvin Bell's done with these guys. I mean, we got 7, maybe 8 guys that are true starting caliber, serviceable Big Ten guys on the defensive line. What we used to joke about at Iowa in the linebackers room is like, typically in a 3 linebacker defense, you say we got 2 guys that are bona fide Big Ten starters, and then there's a 3rd guy that we can work with, right? And it's rare for you to get kind of 3 bona fide starters. And I think we probably got 6, maybe 7 on the D line. So I really like this roster.
Folks, there he is, James Morris, former linebacking great for the University of Iowa Hawkeyes, also former Mr. Gatorade or Mr. Player of the Year in Iowa high school football, Solon High School, and a member of the Iowa High School Football Hall of Fame. James also a Super Bowl winner with the Patriots, now working for UBS in the financial world in Des Moines with his wife and kids and doing a great job. James, I look forward to seeing you, if not next week, in the next couple of weeks, because your analysis, as always, is great. And I'll tell your dad, Greg, I said hello. The shoe guy, Mr. Equipment Manager for the University of Iowa football. Great to always talk to him. I had an on-air radio conversation with him. I got to be on with him and Doug Wagner together. Great guy. Obviously thinks the world of his son, you, and is very proud of you. But it runs in the family, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure, Dave. And thanks for the shout outs. And yeah, lucky to have him as my dad. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to it, James. Thank you so much. For James Morris, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more to close out the show with Hawkeye in just a few moments. Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy Scotty Pritchard. Scotty P joining us. Scott Pritchard, professional sports bettor, Northeast Iowa native. Scotty P been out in Vegas 30 plus years, 31 years and counting. Very successful. By that, I mean 52.4%. As you know, viewers, you have to go to at least break even. Scotty P, his paid picks, 66+% winning, 62% plus winning for the free picks, and that is at Pritchard Wins via social media or pritchardspicks.com. Scotty P, my friend, it's always great to see you. Thanks for joining us, and you're coming off a huge week in the NFL. How you doing, my friend, with that big smile?
I'm doing great, man. The contest season alive and well in Las Vegas, and the Westgate contest, there are over 1,100 contestants ending up $1,000 each versus the point spread. I'm 9-1, half point away from being 10-0. Houston Texans minus the 2.5. They only won by 2. Otherwise, I'd be 10-0. Golden Nugget contest, I took 6 last year out of 154. This year, after 2 weeks, I'm 11-3 versus the number first place. And then the Circa Invitational, which living legend Brett Musburger calls the sharpest hour in sports betting. His words, not mine. I just happen to agree with him, but I'm in second place there behind Steve Fezzik.
I agree with him as well. That's why I chuckled. And you've been all over the country. Sirius XM, you were on a show in Boston last night as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, September 17th. Scotty kind enough to join us. So Scotty P, this question from Scott L, actually. I won't say his last name, but Scott L in the Ottumwa area in southeast Iowa wants to know, with the NFL last week having such a huge success for the underdog and the under better. So over under, if you took the under this week, I believe the NFL, it was 10-5-1 for the underdog beating the spread and also the under better. He wants to know, is there carryover? Should the better take the momentum in from week to week? I think I know your answer already, but I think this is a great question because I think a lot of amateur bettors fall into this.
To his question, please understand that there is absolutely no carryover, because I like to say that last weekend's games are history. This weekend's games are a mystery. Your job, my job, every sharp, every wise guy, every unfair advantage player on the planet, your job is to see it before it happens and then pounce and get the best absolute number you can get. Last weekend has no bearing on what happens this weekend. In fact, I know from a sports betting standpoint, there's an old analogy that if you go to the horse track and you're betting today's races off of last weekend's card, you'll be broke.
That's true. And when I said that in framing the question for you, that is such a pitfall that a lot of bettors will make, or amateur bettors. And yeah, there's very little carryover or no carryover from week to week. Sometimes a team gets hot. But Scott, I think that's the important thing, that you always bring the relatability factor to the viewers for us. And again, it helps that you've got that Iowa homeboy thing. You know, we're all part of the Northeast Iowa thing, but credibility is a huge thing. And you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, where you're doing it, for as long as you've been doing it at a high level, 30 plus years. And again, 66% plus paid picks, 66.2% plus pay or free picks. That's no joke. So you do have your formulas and your systems. And I think a lot of people, when they look at credibility, they say, okay, Scott Pritchard, that works for him.
It's patience, discipline, money management skills, the ability to shop, recognize value, simply learning and knowing how to win. I say this because I'm successful after 30 plus years in Sin City, Las Vegas, because I really believe no one has made more mistakes than me. So this is not easy. It is designed to separate you from your money. So I only bet based on two things. One, I have to have an informational advantage. And number two, I have to get the best number. I say that because mathematically, regular season football, we're talking about 272 games. If you can steal, extort, grind, find just a half point, the best of it per game, that adds up to 136 free points. My favorite word, free points. It's about value with a capital B. Money management, critically important. It is not for the faint of heart. I love it. It's a grind. I chose to eat this frog. It provides a very nice lifestyle. But again, people think that I just started having this success out of the womb. Nothing could be farther from the truth. I've gone from one of the world's worst sports bettors to now one of the world's best.
Long, what a mercurial path, as they like to say, Scotty P. And I couldn't agree more with you. So you joined me on my Circa Sportsbook sports betting show for radio about an hour or so ago. You joined Mike Palm and me. I'm my friend from Circa and a Northeast Iowa native as well. VP of Operations with Circa. I think I know the answer, but maybe you have a different pick than an hour ago. What is your pick of the week? And I know you said something on radio, and I'll say it if it's different than what you just say now. Do you have a new pick, or what is your pick of the week, the value pick, whether it be for the season or this upcoming week? What is your pick of the week, Scotty B?
Well, right now I'm looking at a team that has flat out underachieved, a team that I was high on going into the season based on the fact that they went 9-8 a year ago, even though their stud star quarterback did not play a year ago. This team has gone to the AFC Championship game 2 of the past 3 years. This team actually made it to the Super Bowl against the Rams before losing by 3 to Stafford and company in LA. I really feel that the Bungles, I have a love-hate relationship with them. I am not emotionally attached to the team one way or the other, but it's all based on logic. It's based on value. It's based on number. I do not bet teams. I bet numbers. I bet value. The Bengals are 0-2. Opening weekend, they turned the ball over 3 more times than the opposition. New England, they had a touchdown called back. They fumbled in the end zone as well. They lost 16-10. But I'm telling you right here, right now, this team to make the playoffs, and let us not forget this past weekend, David, all they had to do was not give up a 4th and 16 against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they would have won that contest, which means they would have the inside track. They'd have the tiebreaker in case it gets close late, and it almost always does. But they're 0-2. They are the best 0-2 team on the planet. This team, they have a very favorable schedule. They have a chip on their shoulder. They have talent. Talent conquers all. But let's get back to a math value standpoint. They are simply minus 130 to make the playoffs. Let us not forget, the Ravens were favored to win this division, and they've struggled, right? The Ravens are 0-2, so they haven't even lost any ground, but their schedule is way more favorable outside the division. They get to play Carolina, they get to play Denver, they get to play Tennessee. So even if they don't win their division, and I'm not conceding anything, based on their weak schedule, they have an outstanding chance to finish one of the top 7 teams in the AFC. Minus 130 is stealing.
Always great to talk to you and see that smiling face, Scotty P. Thanks so much.
Thanks again, David. Keep up the good work, my man.
I will if you will. We'll make that deal with each other. So, folks, for Scotty P. and Scott Pritchard and James Morris and John Steppe, my production partner, Greg Kajewski at Better Edge and BetterEdge.com, and to you, the viewers. I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you.